Hey, what's up YouTube? So today I'm going over just a review on so far how I've been doing in solo self-found hardcore for PoE, Path of Exile. This was my first time really going through hardcore for more than just 2 acts, and it's been a very interesting experience. It really gets your heart racing when the health bar gets low and you think you're totally invincible and then all of a sudden you're not, and it's very fun. I've been having a blast on it though, honestly. It's like a completely different game from normal Trade League, which is what I've been playing for how many years. So a couple things I wanted to go over, just quick tips and things that are helping make the run go smooth. So one thing that I want to just start and get out of the way, out the gate, is that the skill you use for your leveling progress is way more important than it is in Trade League. In Trade League, you get things like a Tabula, you run around with Wanderlusts, and you get Goldrum to do your resist. Like, everything's just kind of on easy mode. You can 6-link a skill that might not be that good, and it'll feel totally fine. But in something like SSF, or especially SSF HC, you really are only going to be working on a 4-link for a lot of the game. And then obviously a lot of the quest. When I say game, I just mean the leveling up campaign. That some of the skills are just better than others. They just are, and it's unfortunate, but GGG has been they've been developing the gems over many years, and some of them have seen some really great times and then have been nerfed into completely useless states because too many people played them and this reason or that reason. So there's a lot of up and down. So for example, my first guy was using Ground Slam to start, and Ground Slam's a totally fine skill, there's nothing wrong with it, and it scales based off of weapons. So if you're good with crafting weapons, that's fine. You know, like, okay, I hit this part of the game, I can craft on fizz damage. Once I hit Ossuary, I get the crafts unlocked to get high percent fizz, high flat fizz, and then all I need to do is find like one of those 2 things on a rare with an open prefix. If you know all that stuff, it's totally fine and you're going to do great. But then there's also the fact that your passive tree in hardcore is going to be almost completely geared around surviving. So then you don't just want something that's going to be great, you want something that's going to be phenomenal with no investment. And there are actually plenty of skills that are like that. So even if it's not necessarily what you want to be doing when you're in the process of mapping, maybe you can just burn a couple extra passive points and then refund them later because you get so many free passives to then do what you want. So like, for example, if I wanted to eventually be CI, right, Chaos Inoculation, even though I'm burning so many passives on life, and I can't just trade people for Orbs of Regret, you'll still pick up some more Orbs of Regret on your own. There's not too many vendor recipes that use them, so it's not like you'll really need them for that many things anyway. And you get, this 11 isn't an accurate number, because I think I've skipped some refunds, and I've wasted a couple refunds here and there. So there's a lot of like refund points you get for free that you can just say, okay, screw it, let me take out these life nodes, take out this, refund, do stuff. So keep that in mind when you're leveling up your character to make a more safe, defense-oriented build. Like with mine, I started off, I went up a normal route, and the first thing I did was get health. I picked up a little bit of damage nodes, which was nice, but really only because they were on the way to more health, which I then proceeded to use to get to, plot twist, more health. And there was some shield nodes, Facro here, and more health, and just more health, just health everywhere. Well, health and evasion rating. You want multiple layers. Never rely on just one form of defense. So I'm going to use that as a segue, an accidental but totally planned segue to the defense layers, right? So you can't just stack health and be okay. I pretty much am currently playing, the first guy I was doing was a Marauder, right? He's very straightforward. He wasn't just Ground Slam, he transitioned into Earthquake, which then transitioned, obviously was used with Warcries, then he became a Warcry exerting boy, and then eventually I actually completely changed him to Ancestral Warchief Totems, changed his Ascendancy and everything, doing that almost exclusively with the free refund points they gave me, and a couple of Orb of Regrets he picked up along the way. And he's doing great. It's just I switched to a build that I've played very recently, which I should have known wouldn't have been very fun. But anyway, I'm not just stacking life. Like, sure, there's also evasion rating, but I'm not just stacking life and evasion rating. And a quick note on that is that those things don't do anything on their own. You need gear to give you those. So for example, life, right? You need life on gear. That's totally fine and normal, straightforward. You know, unless you're doing early CI, which is probably a bad idea unless you have a lot of currency lying around to craft your own ES gear. So, like these gloves, they were the first 4-link with my colors, or at least the potential for my colors that I picked up. And I was like, finally, I need these. I want these as my first 4-link for this character. So I went and I used, they were just a white item. So I used a transmute orb and then orb of alterations until I got, I think it was the max life. And then I used an orb of augmentation. This guy, I used these guys to get it the life. And then this guy gave it the cold res, which these are really low rolls, but the item level is 29, so they don't get too much better. The res obviously could have been, but it is what it is. The point was that I just had them for the 4-link and they gave me life. And since you're not using like niche uniques or anything throughout the build, because you're SSF, you have to find the darn things yourself, you can usually make up the resist and everything elsewhere. So life, evasion rating, armor. And that's where it gets interesting, because you're pretty much choosing on every piece of gear, do you want armor or evasion rating, right? Or ideally, in my opinion, the hybrid items are the best. So something like this, where it's got both armor and evasion rating, is just like mint, you know, because you're getting a lot of reduction and a lot of dodge chance. So one thing I really want to show off that I think is highly underrated is how impactful either of those two stats actually is on each piece of gear. So for example, my character wants green and blue sockets, so it's very rough for him to roll an armor evasion rating item, which is strength and dex, to have 2 green, 2 blue. You would think it wouldn't be that bad, but it is. I've wasted a lot of chromatic orbs and have not made these damn gloves do what I want them to do. Anyway, the point is, these gloves have my sockets. I didn't even have to roll them, they just came out like that. But the energy shield portion of it does nothing for me. Now granted, these are really low level, so they're not a good example because even the evasion rating is not doing shit for me. But if we take a look at something like this chest piece, right? My chance to evade attacks is 32% right now at this second. Now, that's not counting, you know, acro, phase acro, and blah, blah, blah. But if I take off the chest, 17%. So just putting this on is whatever 32 minus 17 is. I swear I'm not using a calculator right now. 15%. Just putting on that armor is a 15% chance to evade attacks. And that's not counting the fact that the armor itself has 4% chance to dodge attack hits, because dodging and evading are very different. They're not very different. They're similar, but they're different lines, and that's important too. So if we look, I've got 32% chance to evade attacks, 44% chance to dodge attacks, 30% chance to dodge spells, and I don't know the order, if it's like, if you don't evade, then it's going to roll dodge. It might be a reversed order, but if one fails, the other one will roll and see if it hits or not. Now, the thing is, no matter how much you have with dodging and evading, hits are still going to get through. It's impossible to get a 100% chance, right? So then, what other layers can we put on? And by the way, the dodging, I believe, is pretty much entirely from this area. These 4% dodge nodes, and this guy, and this guy. So this is where dodging is coming from in its entirety. That's why when you hear acro, phase acro, it's a very common, big deal layer of defense. Not an entire defense, but just a layer, right? Added on top of everything else you're doing. So, a big note to as a last thing about phase acro is the first passive, acrobatics, has a lot of negative effects to it. That's why you'll see a lot of times in trade league, people will get something called a thread of hope here, and it'll let them just take this without taking this. The reason that's so good is because this one has downsides. Now, the downsides on this are 50% less armor, 30% less ES, 30% less chance to block spell damage and attack damage, right? So what does this mean? You would see this and you would think, okay, I go acro, phase acro, and then I just don't bother with armor, energy shield, and blocking. Why bother using a shield, right? Very wrong. This is part of why my character has been pretty much invincible this whole time. So my shield, right, it only has a 26% chance to block. And I'm not getting block chance anywhere else. There's really very few places you could get it. Pretty much the passive tree. Actually, I lied. I am getting a good amount from the passive tree, right? So these percentages, the 2% to block attack damage, 2% to block spell damage, 4% to block whatever, right? These are not actually, as you would think, you get these and they're cut in half by acrobatics. They're not. I'm honestly not sure of the specific math. I didn't dig into it, but what I believe is going on is that you take your block chance, which is 26%. All of these are going to affect that 26%, and then that new number is going to be cut in half. So when I put a point into this, I'm not getting the full 4% chance to block, but I'm getting more than 2. So that's worth noting. That block chance is not completely useless, and especially when you're on hardcore and every little bit of added defense is a huge importance. That's kind of big. So even with having acrobatics and a less 30% less, sorry, I've been saying 50%, I meant 30% less chance of damage to block. Brain just ran too fast for the mouth for a minute. We're back. Sorry. So this shield is still, between the shield and the 3 passive points that I'm passing anyway for the rest of my tree, I'm getting 25% chance to block attack damage, 30% chance to block projectile attack damage, and then, you know, a small 4% chance to block spell damage, but it's 4%. It's negligible, but it's cool that it's there, right? Recovery modifiers and avoidance have to do with just other nodes on the tree. Note with that, the stun, chance to avoid being stunned, right? Like I have 20% chance to avoid being stunned right here, and I have some down here as well. Blocking and being stunned share the same, I don't know what to call it, but they're shared. So, for example, if you have cannot be stunned, you also can't be stunned from a block. So normally what happens is if you're blocking a lot of attacks, like the enemy's just railing at you, or there's like the titty monsters that shoot needles out, and a million of them hit you at the same time, and you have a very high block chance, like you're like a max block character, your guy's gonna be like stuttering, like trying to block them all. And it actually completely throws your game off, and it can also get you locked up in a bad spot, right? So that's not good. Obviously, being stunned is also very, very bad, and it happens in a similar manner, just, you know. But if you get anything that involves you not being stunned, also is applying to your block recovery. So granted, I'm not stun immune, I don't have like 100% block recovery, but every little mod here is helping out so that I don't get myself caught in a bad spot while playing. And there's also this Pantheon, which if you ever forget about Pantheons, you can just hit Y whenever you're in town and switch them around. This guy right here, this is huge. Even if you don't have any of the other stuff for stun and block recovery, this guy will save your ass. At some point in time while you're playing on hardcore, this guy will save your ass. So later on in the game, when you have more stuff mixed out and you're min-maxing whatever, obviously you could start looking at the other ones because there's a lot of really juicy stuff, especially when you capture the other parts of them. I also really like doing this life flask one. Not at all mandatory or anything, just I like that one. I'm a big fan. But with these, you obviously just skim through them, see which one you find more attractive based on where you are or aren't having issues, and go for that. But that's huge. Anyway, the short summary from this part of the rant is that even though I'm getting acrobatics, I'm still getting huge block chance. A huge defensive layer from blocking by using a shield, and I'm really not losing that much damage by using a shield. Granted, if I use a second wand and I had them rolled out really well, in a perfect world of min-maxing, that's a lot more damage that I could potentially get. But getting to that point on solo self-found and on hardcore is not something that will happen anytime soon, and that's like not worth planning for when you think about how hugely impactful that shield slot is for you for surviving. So what I mean by that is having the extra layer of defense is huge. It helps me just be invincible pretty much. This one rolled an ass ton of life and some good resist. This was actually a very, very lucky find of a shield. So it's not necessarily the best example, but I've had some other cool shields that I cycled through while I was leveling. And let's talk about the resists, right? Having the resists on here makes it less important to have them on these gloves. And the only reason I have these gloves is because they're still the only thing I found with 2 green, 2 blue that wasn't getting in the way of something else I had. So having a crap ton of life on it also helps the fact that my gloves have low life, and my belt sucks too. All of these things that are gimped are being made up for by having a shield. So huge helpful, very much recommended, and pretty much any build that can use it on hardcore, a shield in general, even if you don't invest to it in the trade. The resists. You don't necessarily need to have 75% at all times for everything you're doing, but you kind of want to. So when you're in softcore, you don't really care as much if the time it takes to min-max her to catch up your resists and to craft on gear and go back to your hideout and use the crafting bench, right? To get like this, I crafted that fire and cold res on at the bench. It was like 1 alchemy. Same thing there. This has an open spot that I could craft on when I need to. These have life crafted on them. Crafted the resist. Like, everything I have is like crafted shit on it. I even crafted strength on this just because I had chaos res, and that's awesome. Taking a death here and there on softcore for the sake of saving yourself like a lot of time and effort is totally worth it. On hardcore, that's not a thing. There's no such thing as, oh, taking a death is worth it. You take a death, you're gone. You make a new character. That's it. Like, that's, you know, the point. So it's a lot more worth your time investment to maybe just take a minute out and go check where your resists at. Maybe you can go to a vendor, right? Like, maybe you walk over to Clarissa here, and she will have... maybe I'm low on lightning resist, and I buy this topaz ring, and it just happens to have int. Maybe I need int too, you know? Whatever the case is. Very, very helpful to have your resists up. So now we have a character that has a very defensive passive tree, and along the route, I scooped up some good stuff. Like, this was more for consistency than for damage. Like, it's giving me faster throwing the traps, which is helping me zip through a lot quicker. This one spot right here was huge for me, and I couldn't wait to get here. I took a while to actually get here. Like, I got a lot of this defensive stuff that I'm mousing over now early on, and then once I covered most of my bases, I think it was once I finished out this wheel here, I was like, sweet, I'm finally gonna get to run up here. And this is giving me defense with a tiny bit of damage, great defense. It's gonna be giving me big damage, and then a decent little boosted damage. Well, this is actually really small. I might not even get this cluster, but that's because it's for the special type of trap. It's the whole thing. But it's just, this is like, you want to try to find areas like this where it might take you a couple points to get to, but like, I'm gonna be here anyway, obviously, for my trap cluster. So an extra 1, 2, 3 points of just traveling to then get to like ample amounts of both defensive and offense and utility, technically, like, that's huge. Try to be efficient with your points is the point I'm trying to get at with that. Like, would I like to go all the way down here and get like Art of the Gladiator so I run faster? Sure. And then this little cluster here, yeah, this is fucking amazing. Like, these 4 points are humongous. This would have been great, super helpful. Is it worth the extra 5, 6, 7 points to get here? No, not at all. That's the problem, is point efficiency is a lot more impactful when you have to waste a lot of your passive points on surviving. So I think that's most of my layers. Oh, the armor. I want to talk about the armor real quick. So let me actually go to my hideout so I can show you. Right now I only had 7, but with my golem I got the stone golem, right? I mean, sorry, chaos golem. It goes up to 11% estimated physical damage reduction. So 11% is big, but when I shield slam, I have shield charge with additional accuracy, so it always hits, with faster attack, so it just goes quicker, and fortify. So this link here, which was a little annoying to roll, like, you know, use chromatics and shit, it's worth every single currency you put into getting it, and you really don't want to take it off, because that fortify, like, even if you're not moving it to get around, for example, at first I actually just had shield charge and fortify, and then when I could, I linked in additional accuracy, and then eventually I was able to roll these boots to where I got faster attacks as well. So now it's actually got half decent movement, right? But I'll still use flame dash to get around a lot, or if I'm just running, you could phase run too. Never underestimate phasing, which I'll talk about in a second. So fortify is going to add 20% on top of this. So then we're looking at 31% physical damage reduction, right? Like, that's actually a lot. So where is this 11% coming from? 4 of it's coming from the chaos golem, but then another... Here we go. So this 7 right here is purely from items. So like, if I take this off, right? This right here, nothing. I have no phys damage reduction. So this shield has 256 armor. That's very, very low for a shield. Shields can have upwards of 2,000. Not at my level, they can't. But point is, just to put this in perspective, this is probably like a 10th of the potential of like an endgame shield's armor. 5% physical damage reduction just because I have 256 armor on a piece of gear. Now, to be fair, you're comparing that to the fact that the shield could have evasion rating, which would probably be, I think it's closer to like 9% chance to evade. But that's 9% on top of the 32 I already have, whereas the 5% chance to reduce physical damage is on top of nothing. So this rinky-dink helm with 155 armor, which is really low because it's an armor ES hybrid, this is like the lowest armor you can get on a helm, is that type of base, is giving me another 2%. Now that one's obviously minuscule, like that's not needed, but I had the helm first. That's the only reason I still have that, is because I had the helm first and then got the shield. Ideally, now that I have the shield, I would switch out the helm. But if you have none of something, getting even just 5% of it is huge. And what's really cool about this is the way it works, right? So something hits me, it's going to try to evade it, it's going to try to dodge it, it's going to try to block it, and then if all else fails, it's going to be, assuming it's physical damage, it's going to be reduced by, not actually 7, so I'm going to keep my golem up, by 11% damage. And then if it's an element, I'm keeping all my resists very high, so it's going to be reduced by a much, much higher percent, but that's, you know, normal. So the summary of this is that my character is actually freaking beefy. And then for my Ascendancies, I specifically took, I already knew what I wanted. I wanted this chain, I wanted this, and I wanted this, right? I specifically took the first 2 that give me little to no damage, but big survivability bonuses. Now the logic, and this is something I'm very adamant about when I make on the 3 total characters I've ever made for hardcore. Get your defense first, so that when I go to do my Merc lab, right, the one, you know, that difficulty, I'm gonna feel a lot more comfortable. I'm not gonna feel like nervous that I'm about to die and waste all the time getting up to it. It might take a little longer to kill him, but I'm gonna be perfectly comfortable. And eventually, when I get to the Uber lab, that one's going to be a little more risky. Obviously, it's Uber lab, but honestly, I really shouldn't have any issue doing that Uber lab either. And of course, I'm going to get dark shrines and go the extra mile to really play it safe. But yeah, So I am heavily on defense. So on top of all the other layers, I'm regenerating a lot of life per second, up to 10%, because I'm just wailing out traps in clusters. So that's 3 or 4% every time I throw. And so in short, I'm pretty much in a fight, I'm always regenerating the 10% life per second. And everything's blinded. Everything around me is blinded, so everything has a 50% reduced chance to hit me. My guy is thick. And like, granted, I'm only at Act 8, so like I'm not done with the game, but all the bosses I've done so far, I've been mind blown. And I'm actually up to one right now, Harbor Bridge, that I wanted to do on the stream in a minute. Just to, I'm not worried about it at all. Like, that fight can get kind of crazy, but I'm more or less going to be face tanking it. Like, if I see shit on the ground under me, I'm going to move slightly to the right. But for the most part, I'm not going to be hiding way in the back trying to play defensive and scary. Like, I'm in the front playing like a melee trapper, just not caring, which ties into the fact that I'm running a blasphemy aura. So that synergizes really well with the nearby enemies being blinded, right? At one point, for a while, I was using Arctic armor as just another layer. 25% less physical damage taken from hits is really big. But then eventually, once I got the blind ascendancy, and it just kind of got not needed. And then I also got this really cool cluster jewel that I wanted to, well, I threw some chaos at it. Like, I just chaos spammed it, and it happened to roll some traits that were not bad, and that requires me to use a herald. It's a whole thing. But point is, my guy's been doing amazing. I'm very confident that he's going to get into mapping without an issue. I don't know how far I'm really going to get to go with this guy, because it is still my first time doing hardcore. But I'm confident that I can at least be proud of his progress. And heisting's going to be interesting. I've only done a few, and I out-leveled them a bunch, so we'll see. But multi-layered defense, multiple layers. Don't ever just focus on one thing. Think very carefully about stuff like acrobatics, just as an example. Huge defensive layer, but it nerfs some other things. But don't ignore those other things. They're still very much worth getting. You know, just really always think, how can I be more tanky? And even with almost no damage on my tree, my guy is just having no issues with damage at all. Because he's got good gems linked up, and you just pick a good skill. That's something I was saying in the beginning. Like, stuff is just totally good. Oops, I ran out of mana. This guy does have mana issues, I will say that. But, yeah, that's about it. So, I think I'm going to conclude this video, and get back to the stream, get to finally kill that boss. TLDR of this whole thing is as many layers of defense as you can find or think of. You know, armor's physical damage reduction, golems, fortify, if you can somehow fit it in. There's a lot of different ways to do it. Your resists, try to keep on top of your resist. Chaos is gonna be rough, it's gonna be hell, but if you can get it anywhere. Block chance, use a shield. Stun avoidance, if possible. That's it. Evasion, all that stuff. That's all I got. Use smart skills. Don't hesitate to use the currency, the alts, alks, chouse, whatever. Because if you can get your character to be more comfortable, you're going to get through the game quicker, you're going to get to better farming faster, and you'll get that currency back, right? So, hopefully I can make more videos like this for this character in the future, and I don't get him killed. And, yeah, I'll talk to you guys later.